And welcome back to another episode of Pro Talks. We are thrilled to have John Runny here with us today. He's a business leader, author, and speaker. He's the co-founder and president and CEO of Peak Demand, a global manufacturer of products for electric utilities. So he's also a small business owner himself, which I think is important. And even more so, he served as a naval officer on nuclear submarines during the Cold War and has been leading industrial business for more than 20 years. And we're going to learn much more about that during this episode. John is super passionate about leadership and employee engagement, and he spent 22 years in corporate America after the Navy. So John knows his stuff when it comes to leading a team of people, a very diverse team of people. So today we're going to be talking about his experience in the Navy, learning about people management. He'll be sharing with you his tips on how to keep employees engaged by running your business like the commissioning of a naval ship. So you are all in for some awesome stories and lessons you can take away and apply them to your home service business. So we like to get started by something we call a lightning Greenberg round, where we get to know John in under 1 minute. So I will start us off. John, where did you grow up?
Manchester, New Hampshire.
Sure. What was your first job?
Cashier at Burger King.
I want to know how many other pros that was their first job too. I feel like that was a lot of people's first jobs. That was my mom's first job.
Great job.
If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
A pizza.
Pizza. I love pizza too. I'm not surprised. All right. Something a lot of people don't know about you.
I'm a trained firefighter.
Oh, like it.
Impressive. Can do it all. And what is a skill or talent that you wish you had?
Since we lost Eddie Van Halen yesterday, I would say playing guitar.
That would be such a cool skill. I've always wanted to have that skill. That is a talent for sure. All right. What's your proudest accomplishment?
Getting qualified as a submariner and receiving my gold dolphins, something you wear in a uniform symbolizing you're qualified. So that was my proudest moment.
Okay.
What a cool honor. I can just imagine what that looks like too. That's awesome. So
obviously we did the pre-meeting, and on there we're talking a little bit about your experience in the Navy and how it felt, more or less like a corporation and not a family. I know that you use analogies a lot based upon your experiences. So what's the ship analogy that you use to train other leaders and other business owners as you're talking to them?
Yeah, so I saw it. I was watching the commissioning ceremony at the USS Gerald R. Ford, and that was our newest aircraft carrier. And if you've ever seen a Navy commissioning ceremony, it's a really amazing event. It's a lot of history, a lot of tradition. It goes way back to the British Navy that all this stuff comes from. But I'm really into that stuff, all of the ceremony and what have you. But there's one thing that I was watching the ceremony, and something really stood out to me, and that is the sponsor of the ship. In this case, it was the daughter of the president. She was the sponsor, and she makes an announcement, and she says, crew, officers and crew of the USS Gerald R. Ford, man the ship and bring her to life. And then as soon as she says this, all of the sailors, all the officers, they run up the gangplank, and they're all in their dress white uniforms, and there's music playing, bells ringing, they're raising the flag, and then they man the rails. All these officers and men and women man the rails. And the one thing that really stood out to me when I watched that ceremony for the first time ever, and I've seen dozens of these ceremonies, was that the crew brings the ship to life. Without that crew, it's just a cold hunk of steel sitting in the harbor, right? And so, the analogy I bring to businesses is that people bring our business to life, right? We can have all the great plans, we can have all the ideas, we can have the best marketing plans, but really it's our people that bring our companies to life and so I think that analogy really stands really strong to me, is that it's really about our people that bring our companies to life.
Yeah, I think from an analogy perspective, that's similar to some other ones that I've heard, which is, like a business like a rocket ship. And as they're going, they're on a mission, they're going to Mars. And so they're going in the direction, they have the vision and those things. But really, you need someone to crew it, because otherwise it's just, an inanimate object that's just kind of getting shot somewhere and is going to do nothing. So it really is about that crew experience. And I like that analogy too. Tell us a little bit more about, from the Navy kind of perspective and your transition into kind of the corporate world and then the SMB world. What are some of the differences there in terms of like leadership style that you feel works really well? and then also are very different?
So I think the one thing about a submarine, which is really unique in the military, is you're very close quarters, right? So we had so you think about it, the average age of a submariner is 22 years old. The old man, the captain, is about 40 years old. So you have these young people, right? And on board that submarine, you have a nuclear reactor, 24 nuclear missiles, a bunch of torpedoes, a bunch of very expensive systems. And yet it all works, right? So we allow young people to have tremendous amount of responsibility in the submarine. And the other thing is, in these close quarters, we stood watch for hours and hours together. So we really got to know each other. So I got to know the people that work for me. They got to know me very well because we just spent countless hours just, sitting on watch. I mean, we would go on deployment for 90 days. So think about it. It's like going into work one day and they lock all the doors and you're gone for 90 days. Well, you couldn't just get rid of somebody if you didn't like them. You had to learn how to get along with everybody you were deployed with. And then every time we came back from patrol, 20 to 25% of the crew would switch out. You'd have all new people and you'd go and do it again. And so what I learned about that is that really relationships are important. People are important. Every person is important to the operation of that submarine. So one person makes a mistake and everybody could perish, right? So your enemy was not only, the Cold War, our enemy was the Soviets, but it wasn't just the Soviets. It was the thousands of pounds of seawater above our heads that could crush us at any moment, right? So we had to operate as a team. Everybody had to have each other's backs. And that's something that I took right into the business world with me. And I think the one thing I saw in corporate America, at least, is that we didn't put a lot of value on people, right? It was almost like a number on a spreadsheet. You said, they would call it headcount, right? It wasn't an employee, it was headcount, right? And so we didn't really put a lot of value. We didn't get to know our employees. We didn't get to, we almost treated them like an expense. And really until I started my own business and kind of got a smaller team around me, and then I was in charge, I really brought that submarine feeling back to an organization. So it was all about getting to know my employees, spending countless hours with them, knowing what makes them tick, and then making sure that they understood that everyone was really important towards accomplishing our mission, accomplishing our goals. Because no longer were we a big army, right? When I was in corporation, we had an army of people. Well, now I'm a small little SEAL team, right? So I'm going up against a bigger army. Every person is really important. So especially as small business owners, everybody has to contribute. You can't have one person, not pulling their weight, because it can really hurt your organization.
Something that you mentioned that really sticks out to me, even in our own company at Housecall, but really with our pros company, is this age gap between leadership and between the employees. So you're saying the leaders of the submarine, they're in their 40s, and you got these young guys, which in our case would be techs, who are in their 20s. So do you have any advice on how to bridge that age gap? Because as you say, yes, people matter. That's at the core of everything we do, everything we talk about. But sometimes there is just that generational gap, and you feel like you can't get through to your employees or inspire them. What tips do you have for those pros who are kind of in that same position?
Yeah, so this is really important. So I actually had a guest on my podcast, and we talked a little bit about that. It's a really important subject. So one of the things is with a lot of younger people is they want to feel like they belong. They want to feel like they're part of something that's really important, and they belong. So I think when we have this era of social media, and there's a lot of ways that we connect virtually, especially now in COVID, we're connecting virtually a lot, but physically and emotionally we're not connecting as well. So first of all, the young people want to belong. They want to feel like they belong, and they also want to feel like they're contributing to something that's important. So making that connection with young people is all about bringing them into that belonging, and also helping them feel like the work that they're doing has an impact on the organization.
And how do you talk about that with them? Because as someone in that position, I'm definitely mission-driven, experience-driven. Everyone's a bit money-driven, but when you're younger, you can afford to not be completely just guided by your check. So what are some tips you have for starting those conversations and letting your employees know that they are a part of something bigger than they are, whether it's, just servicing your customers the best they can or answering the phones with the best customer service? What tips do you have for that?
So the biggest thing is connecting their work to the bigger picture. So I would give you this example. I took over a plant when I was 32 years old. It was my first manufacturing plant. I ended up running 8 manufacturing plants in corporate America. But my first plant, I was walking the shop floor. I spent a lot of time getting to know my people. And one of the things, when I asked them what they did, they said, oh, I machine this part. I paint this part. I put these parts together. And then I would say, well, what did they do? He said, I don't really know. I just put them together and I make sure that this thing slides perfectly. I was like, well, where does it go? Where does it go? I have no idea. I have no idea. So this plant for 25 years or so, the employees had been there. They've been making parts. They didn't really know how they worked or where they went, how they went together. So for what we did is we set about making it very clear how their work impacted the products we made and how the products we made went to, in this case, we were selling them to electric utilities. And so their work helped keep the lights on for all these cities around the country. So their work kept lights on in hospitals and made sure elevators ran properly and made sure that the power stayed on for nursing homes and what have you. So we connected the work that they were doing to the product we were building to when we actually were the actual mission, which was to help keep the lights on for electric utilities. And as we did it, it was almost sort of like they all went, wow, I've got something to tell my family. Like I'm actually helping keep the lights on. And I didn't realize it. I thought I was making this little part for years and years. I was making a widget. Instead, I'm actually helping our company keep the lights on. And I think connecting their actual work to the bigger picture is a really important thing.
Yeah, and I feel like a really good analogy, or how do you think about this just in the service world? Do ride-alongs. So have your dispatchers do ride-alongs with your technicians. Have your technicians do ride-alongs with your sales techs. Have your sales techs do ride-alongs in the office. And if you can have them experience each part of the business, they can see how their actions impact others within, and then get to see the overall mission as well. Because sometimes people working in the back office don't get to see the front of the office, and they can't see the customer smiles. And then the same in reverse too. The people working in the front office can't see all the hard work going on in the back of the office that even enables them to provide that customer experience. So if you're in the service space, think about how can you do these ride-alongs? How can you have people switch positions or shadow for a day? Doesn't have to be a week, doesn't have to be a month, but just so they can start to build that flavor. So that is a really good golden nugget that you kind of shared there, and how you align people on just the bigger vision of the thing and how their part of it folds into that bigger piece. So if I had to give you 2 choices here, well, actually there could be a third one. Would you rather hire fast and fire fast, hire slow and fire fast, or reverse, hire fast, fire slow? And why?
So I think leaders need to be decisive. So I think anything that's slow is not good. So I would say that, one of the things with leadership is that when you stall and you slow down, so say you're hiring, right, and you take a long time to make a decision, the rest of the organization it screeches to a halt, right? They're waiting for you to make a decision. So I would say hire fast, right? But then here's where I go against what I just said, in that I'm typically a fire slow guy, right? So I believe in 4 strikes and you're out. So I usually give people the benefit of the doubt, because a lot of times we hire people, we put them in a role, and we find out that it's not a perfect fit. And we've got to find the right fit to put them in the organization. So too quickly we fire, too often we fire too quickly, and we don't spend the time to actually make sure that we got the right person in the right role. I mean, if you find out it's not a fit, then that's pretty easy. But if it's just a matter of getting the right role, making sure they're motivated, make sure they understand what's going on, I think then I would take the time to fire slowly. So, but hire quickly. Don't spend a lot of time on it. So.
Yeah, that's some interesting advice. I mean, you hear it all across the board. Some people are very opinionated about this fact, but I think the way that you think about it too is similar to kind of your experience in the Navy, where you know what, everyone's going to get onboarded, and then all of a sudden you got the person in the ship with you or the sub with you, and guess what? You're at 10,000 feet below the sea level, and you have to find a place for them to fit. So I feel like that is really interesting just for people to think about, especially with if they are good, where do they fit within the organization? Maybe they're just not on the right seat. And so having those open and candid conversations with them helps you find that right fit, but you have to give them that chance because it might also be you. And I feel like not enough people take enough extreme ownership of their own faults, and it might have just been your fault. And so now it's on you to make sure that the person ends up in the right seat.
Because you hired them for a reason in the first place. And we like to talk about interview questions and how to actually gauge if someone will be a good fit for your company. So you've already done that basic groundwork. It takes a lot of self-reflection to be able to own that. Maybe you're the one who let down your employee. I'm wondering, maybe it's a question for the both of you. Once you recognize someone is in the wrong seat, what do you do to go and get them in the correct one? Like, what's your process?
Yeah, so a lot of times it's just, it's the corrective, it's corrective action discussions, right? So there's some behavior or some action that causes you to have that one-on-one with the employee and say, all right, I noticed this happened. What were the reasons behind it? So just trying to truly understand what the issues are, and then, and giving them an opportunity to make that change and make that shift. And I was saying earlier, the 4 strikes and you're out is, I tend to, assume that somebody's going to make a change based on a conversation. Well, if your boss calls you into a room and you have a conversation, usually that's an indication that it's time to make a change, right? But the thing is, you tend to discover some people can't change like that. That you find that actually they're in the wrong role. They're not happy doing what they're doing. They're so they're uncomfortable with doing what they're doing. So sometimes you find that through your discussions that they're just in the wrong seat and they need to be moved.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about that engagement, because I think one of the precursors to having a conversation is you see employees start to disengage. You were mentioning something about 70% of employees are disengaged. Can you walk us through like how you start to notice that in a thoughtful and deliberate way, and then B, what are some tips that you could give other business owners to get them more engaged?
So a couple things. One is when it comes to engagement, right? If you want engaged employees, you have to be an engaged manager. So you have to be involved, right? So the manager that's in their office doing emails is not a manager that's going to have people that are engaged. So first of all, you got to get out of your office. You have to engage with your employees. Now, that being said, you've got to have ways to connect. So for example, like we do in our company, we have stand-up meetings every morning. We all get together, we talk about what's happening that day, what's everybody's role in that day, and everybody's on the same page before we all go off and do our duties. So we basically bring everybody together, we check in with everybody, we make sure everybody's there, everybody's happy, and then we send them off in that direction, right? So it's a matter of connection. And throughout the day, I spend time on the shop floor talking to them, getting to know who they are. And the thing is, I know my employees, right? I have one employee, for example, you ask him how he's doing in the morning, he's miserable because he's not a morning person. And you just, as a leader, if you're spending time with your people, you get to notice certain things about them. You can tell when they're distracted. You can tell when they're worried. You can tell when they're concerned, or that now absenteeism starts slipping in. You can ask the question, is everything all right? I mean, just having an attitude of caring, right, is a big part of it. So, I was saying earlier on that, without our people, we don't have a business. And so I think we need to treat them like we do our equipment, right? So when it comes to, like, I run a manufacturing plant, right? I maintain my equipment so it'll operate over the long term, right? So if we say employees are an asset, then we have to maintain those assets. And maintaining those assets is connection. And so even in the COVID world where maybe some people are working remotely right now, you can still connect face-to-face on these, Zoom or FaceTime. Just connect and make sure your people are doing all right. So, and the other thing I would say, the second thing is trust. So the one way that employees are more engaged, they're 12 times more likely to be engaged if they trust their manager. So how do you build trust? Well, it's authenticity, right? So you do what you say you're going to do it. You do what you say you're going to do, and you do it consistently. If you do that over time, you develop a reputation for someone who can be trusted. So be a person of your word. That's really important as a leadership, so that you develop trust. Because sometimes, right, you're going to have to deliver bad news. And if your employees trust you because you built that level of trust, they say, you know what, this is crappy news. but I trust John, and he's going to do what's right for us in the long run. So build that trust. That's really important for people to be engaged. They have to trust their boss.
There's also like a physical environment aspect to it too that we had talked about. So yes, you have like this personal one-on-one conversations. You have the stand-ups and the meetings in the morning, so you all start off on the right foot. What things can you put into place in your employees' like physical environment to keep them engaged and motivated?
Physical environment, you mean just like in like their workspace?
Yeah, like in the office. I remember you said something about like you have whiteboards everywhere, or like the brass bell.
Yeah, so, well, that's true. I forgot about that. But yeah, no, so we use a lot of visual management. So we have whiteboards around here talking about different things. Like, for example, what are our shipments yesterday? What are all our orders up on a large whiteboard in the middle of the shop? Everybody can see it. Whenever we get an order, we have this Navy bell that we ring, and everybody gets, claps and gets excited. So so it becomes part of like our culture that we're communicating. And I would say the other thing too, for your small business owners out there is, now imagine if you did this, right? So small business owners know that they're checking their bank accounts in the morning and at night, right? I mean, that's cash is king in small business, right? Well, I do this. I actually send my employees my bank account statement in the morning. Our Monday mornings, I say, here's what we got in the bank. Here's all the bills we have to pay. And here's what we're going to have at the end of the week. I do that every Monday. And I also say every Monday, here's all the orders we got last week, and here's what we shipped last week, and here's what the plan is for this week. So I'm very transparent with my employees. So it's not like some guy behind the curtain pulling the levers. They know it's me, and I'm sharing very authentically how the company's doing.
Yeah, that's really important that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of our pros are just scared at showing prices, because, they might be selling something for $10,000 and paying the guy $25 an hour. And so, there's a disconnect there. And so they're like, well, I should hide my prices. But, in reality, what you're advocating for, it's the same thing that I talk to pros about all the time too, which is like, you can only get the trust through transparency. And so when you educate them about the cost of running a business, they'll much more likely to understand why you're charging what you're charging. And also disincentivize them from thinking like, oh, this is easy. I can just go out on my own and go just charge $10,000, because they don't know, the workman's comp, the insurance, all the vehicles, maintenance, health insurance, like all the other things that go into the cost of running a business. So I like your approach by just having that transparency, but doing it on a weekly basis so everyone knows exactly where you're at, especially, from hey, this is how many orders have come in and this is how many we've shipped. It's no different than, hey, this is how many AC installs we got coming in this week, and this is how many we completed. And, did we do them all? Did we not? Are they on time or whatever? But that's a good way to also probably foster some open conversations, if it's falling behind. It's not as if it's a surprise, and it's not like, oh, it's the end of Q1. Why are we missing? No, we've been having this conversation for weeks now, and it might point out flaws that say, hey, Roland, you got to hire some more people. You're falling behind. Go find some more people. Maybe as a company, we go out and we go recruit together. We go ask our friends, and so it becomes more of a team building thing. So I really, really like that advice. And I highly recommend that transparency aspect to building a better engaged team.
Mm-hmm. Talk about instilling trust through transparency. If you're letting your people see your numbers and they know exactly what's coming in and going out, even like from an employee standpoint, I think that's really cool and unique, because so many companies don't do that, especially if you're a small business, especially in the trades where there is so much heightened competition in the sense of like, there's not enough work to go around. What a great way to keep your employees invested in your company. So, I'm really excited for this last part of our interview, because Roland and I love hearing stories. A lot of our pros are retired military like yourself, and they love hearing all these different stories. So can you tell us like a crazy story that sticks out to you about your time on the submarine that relates to what we've been talking to today in terms of like knowing your people and being and creating like an actual personal relationship with them?
Yeah, so I'll tell you one quick story, and it's literally about the idea I told you about, where like every person was important. So we had a young seaman. So seaman recruit is the lowest rank as an enlisted man, and seaman's the next level. So that's an E2. It's the second lowest rank. Those who are ex-military know what I'm talking about. We call it lower than whale feces. So it's very low. So and then our commanding officer is 06. That's a captain, or similar to a colonel in in the Marine Corps or the Army. So the highest ranking person on the ship and literally the lowest ranking. And so we had this drill. We ran this drill on a regular basis. And so the drill is so one of the crewmates is gone crazy and we have to try to stop him. So that's the drill, right? And so, you have 24 nuclear weapons on board. You should train on this, right? So part of the drill is you go to the small arms locker and there's people that are assigned to grab 45s and shotguns and they guard all of the hatches. So you shut everything down and you try to capture the person that's being a problem. So this young seaman, his job was to guard this one hatch and not let anyone come through the hatch. Well, again, very junior person. The captain decided he's walking around not really participating in the drill. He's observing us going through the drill, and he decided he wanted to come through that door. Now, our captain was a big guy, and he was very famous for he had very bushy eyebrows, okay? So, and I was standing in the hallway when the captain was on the other side of the door trying to come through that hatch. And so he bangs on the hatch, and the seaman who was guarding it he had a shotgun. He said, go around. And the captain knocked again, and the seaman said, go around. And then the captain banged again, and he stuck his big eyeball in, and it's basically a window that's about the size of maybe, I don't know, a softball, circumference of a softball. But all you could see was his eye and his big bushy eyebrow. And we all knew who it was. It was the captain, right?
Go snap.
He banged on it again, and he said, and then the seaman just yelled out, go around, motherfucker. and we're just like, holy cow. You just told the captain, like,
oh my gosh.
And we're just cracking up because we all know it's the CO, it's the captain. This poor kid. But what's funny is the captain made his way around and he came back down around and he came and talked to that young sailor in front of all of us. And he said, you did the right thing. You weren't supposed to allow anyone to come through that hatch. You did your job. But the point is, the matter is that this young person stood up to the most senior person. He was doing his job. And I think we got to recognize that young people can do amazing things. And we can't just think that just because we have a young employee in our company and maybe they're new to the company, that they're not capable of doing great things. And that was just an example of like a very low ranking person doing the right thing, even in the face of the commanding officer. So, and he wasn't going to let that guy through. And it was just kind of a funny story. So, our captain wasn't a very forgiving individual either, but he really appreciated what he did. So.
Wow.
Well, I feel like there's a good example there too. It's once you have the vision and then the values for your company, the company values, adhering to them at all costs, no matter how senior or junior, that should always be applauded. And so in this case, it wasn't really a value, but it was just, hey, we're on this mission, this is thing. And then for the CO to be able to go and recognize that is a really important part of not abdicating leadership, but showing that, hey, I sanctioned this event, this training, all these things, and you did a good job in front of everybody else. And that's where, you have that praise in public, criticize in private, where that kind of comes from. But that's really, I love hearing stories like that.
I talk about a sailor mouth. I love that.
Totally. Yeah.
And that also leads me to think, like, as a leader too, yes, there are those like sticking out in your face situations of where you should commend your people for doing their job or going above and beyond, but like actively being on the lookout for it too, not just waiting until it's knocking on your door, or in this case, the captain's eyeball is sticking through. So making sure that you are if you care about your people, you're looking out for even the small things that they do. Some of the best like feedback that I've gotten from Roland or someone else who's more senior than me is for things that I wouldn't even think I would have gotten praise on because it was either outside my job or something small that I thought. So I can imagine that experience stuck with that seaman for a very long time, probably his whole life.
Yeah, catch people doing things right. That's really important.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's a golden nugget from this story. All right. So wrapping things up here, you have so much experience. If there's one thing that pros should be doing tomorrow, implementing in their business, some kind of final word or piece of advice that you can encourage them with, what would that be?
So I would say this is, I told you I'm a trained firefighter, and that's because everybody on a submarine is a trained firefighter. When there's a fire in a submarine, you don't run away from it, you run towards it. So that's a very important, in a building, right? When we have a fire, everybody runs away and we let the pros take care of it, right? So we let the firefighters take care of it. On a submarine, we ran towards it because our life was in jeopardy if we didn't put that fire out quickly. So my advice today to small business owners, service professionals, if you have a problem in your business, you got to run towards it. You got to take care of it. You can't let that grow, because a fire in a submarine will grow and it will kill everybody on board. And so the same thing with a small problem in your business can grow and can affect your entire business, your profitability. It can put you out of business. So if you see a small problem in your business, don't ignore it. You got to go after it. You got to attack it. You got to run towards it.
I love
Be
it.
the fire chief, and all of your whole crew will follow you if you're a good leader. They'll run with you towards the fire.
Yes.
I like it. Lead by
I love
example.
all your analogies, John. We love
These
analogies.
have been super great for our pros. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us and sharing some of those tips, experiences, advice. Hopefully you guys all got a bunch of golden nuggets written down on your notebook as you guys are watching here. Alexa, do you have any other closing thoughts?
I don't. Again, just thank you, John, for choosing to spend time with Roland and I, and for sharing your stories and your lessons learned and tactical tips with our pros. I can't wait for this episode to come out, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, pros. Bye, John.
Bye, John. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Look forward to seeing you next week. For more information, go to housecallpro.com/pro talks.